Hey everyone, and welcome back to the So Rude podcast. My name is Paige Ruderman, and I am so excited to welcome a special guest to the show. Lisa Kacos is a music maker and music educator living in Nashville, Tennessee. She is a multi-instrumentalist, primarily trumpet and drums, and songwriter who collaborates on music projects both in the studio and on stage. Specializing in music theory and oral skills, Lisa teaches at Lipscomb University, Belmont University, and SAE Institute's Nashville's campus. She teaches music production and songwriting related classes with Thinking Outside the Blocks and Omni Sound Project. I met Lisa as a member of Thinking Outside the Blocks and even went on to take some piano lessons with her, all while learning a ton during her Saturday music theory and production classes with TOTB. I am so excited to dive into Lisa's journey from learning to play every instrument under the sun, teaching music theory, her new band project, and more. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the So Rude podcast.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Paige.
Of course, I'm so excited. And I know I shared a little bit about you and your background, but can you tell us a little bit more about you or anything I may have missed?
How far back do we want to go?
We can even start like, when did you first realize you were interested in music?
I think I got serious about music. I was really excited to pick up the trumpet in sixth grade band. That was the first instrument I really learned. Before that, I would sing in school choirs and church choirs and stuff. Nothing serious. And then trumpet was really learning an instrument from the beginning was a real special thing. And that carried me through middle school and high school enough that I knew I wanted to pursue music in my studies in college.
What about the trumpet was so attractive to you?
You know, it was. I liked the trumpet. One of the neighbors growing up also played trumpet and showed me his at one point growing up. And I was like, that's kind of cool. So I thought I'd maybe like to learn trumpet. I was pretty good at it. I picked it up fairly naturally. But interestingly enough, I always was really attracted to drums. And I never really got into drums until I was in college and started to be around, friends that had bands and just a general music department. There were drum kits, and that was the beginning of the end. So, trumpet was the introduction, and I really liked it. I did everything I could with it in school. I went to a fortunate to go to a high school that had a good music program. So I was in marching band and jazz band and the pit orchestras and all that. And I know you can kind of share that, the marching band thing, right?
Yeah, I can definitely relate. It's fun for sure.
Yeah. Fun group of people. It was a really good musical upbringing, a lot of good opportunities coming out of just being in band in school, really. So, and then going to college was just kind of a new thing in a lot of areas. I kind of grew up as an individual, expanded, learned about new music from friends that I met that were not from my hometown, just as usual when you grow up and branch out a little bit. And then I realized, I studied music in college. That was my major. And that was where I met the first rock band I played with. We were in class piano together and music theory and all the classes. And I feel bad for our teacher looking back. If I ever have a class full of students that give me a hard time, I know I had it coming.
I love how you're in a class of you're learning piano and you're like, all right, we're going to start a rock band. It's like, how do we make that jump?
What's interesting too is I grew up in Michigan, in the Grand Rapids area, and most of the music programs there, at least at the time of me growing up, were classical related. It was like you're going to be a band director or you're going to study performance, and your shot at any gig is going to be the symphony or maybe playing a big band or something, which was fun. And I liked all those studies, but I never really considered that there was such thing as a commercial music degree until I moved to Nashville. And now I'm teaching in two wonderful universities that offer commercial music degrees. And for me, it was always two separate worlds. The band and the music, like rock and roll was one thing, and the teachers at school kind of like look at you funny. And then there's the classical studies, and I liked all of it, but it was very interesting to move to a town where there's careers in music that are much different than where I grew up.
Speaking of the classical versus commercial, did you study the classical when you were going to college yourself?
Yeah, that was really the only choice. I suppose it was classical or maybe jazz, but I like jazz. I don't really jazz a whole lot. So classical it was. So yeah, I studied classical music theory, classical trumpet. Yeah, that was my training. And then on the weekends I would play gigs in bars. So it was two different worlds.
I feel like I can definitely relate to the feeling of whenever I grew up in Delaware, so the only music I knew of was school band, or yeah, if you were lucky enough to know someone in some sort of city symphony. Do you feel like studying the classical side of music helps when it comes to the commercial side? Do you feel like you picked up things along the way, along your classical training that you think really add a lot of value as you started to do more in the commercial space?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for me, absolutely. I know some people might disagree. You know, there's always heavy discussions on whether people think musicianship and learning theory chops is worthwhile or if it just gets in the way. And of course, as somebody who spent many years and a lot of money pursuing the degree, I love it. I think music theory is the building blocks of music, and you can take it or leave it if you want. There's parts of my training that I never revisited after I took the class, but a lot of it I utilize every day on a day-to-day basis. So I find it helpful. And the bits and pieces of it that I don't find helpful, I just don't use. It's as simple as that. But yeah, I've also had to learn to sort of shut it off sometimes if I'm in a creation phase. If I'm working on a song or something, sometimes it's helpful to think about scales or modes or chord progressions and trying new things that I might not normally come to immediately. And sometimes you don't know what you're gonna find. You don't know what you're gonna land on per se. So I always find it refreshing to try something new. And there's constantly situations, even as an instructor at the university, where I'll stumble across an example or something and I'm like, huh, I never thought about it that way. And it'll just make you think in a different way. And sometimes that's exactly what we need to get out of a rut or to be inspired again. So, in my opinion, yeah, musicianship is extremely helpful. And I feel like it saves me time as well.
Totally. I can even remember early lessons I had with you, or even things you were sharing in TOTB where you're like, okay, well, if you get stuck, go to this. And it's like, yeah, just knowing the tools you can use to get yourself out of a hole, I can only imagine is super valuable. And
Yeah,
speaking about teaching as a professor in Nashville, how long have you been in Nashville now?
that's a good question. Moved here fall of 2016, I think. So 8.5 years.
That's incredible.
It's like home. Suddenly 1 year it started to feel like home.
You're just like, oh, I know how to get somewhere without a GPS. This is like proud of a really nice feeling.
Yes, but as you probably also know, I check it every day anyway because of traffic
Yeah, that's so true.
and to avoid the freeway.
Right? So before moving to Nashville, were you and it like I want to make sure I ask some questions about your education and teaching abilities because that is such a gift you have as someone who's been lucky enough to watch you share lessons where you're teaching music or you're explaining music theory or production. You have such a knack for explaining things in a way that make it really complicated things really easy to understand. And I would love to know from you, when did you realize, I might be interested in teaching or sharing something in an educational format?
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it was when I started studying music and I remember my very first music theory class. I didn't know what music theory even was. It was an introductory class. I was a college freshman and like, oh, this is music theory, like learning about the keys and scales and the introduction to harmony and introduction to melody and rhythms and just studying how everything works in music and how it all fits together. And it fascinated me. And I had, again, with being fortunate to have the band background, I already had a bunch of the skills in place. Like I knew how to read music, I knew scales, and I just loved how it all fit together. And something about it like scratches an itch for me. There's something about the way my brain works, and it's like a puzzle, sometimes. So I really took to it. And it's funny because I also mentioned how growing up, it's like, well, you're going to be a band director. Maybe you'll play in the symphony. Maybe you'll play in a big band. Maybe you'll play in a church or something. But I never really thought twice. I thought I would be a band director just because I didn't know what else I would do if I'm going to study music. It's like, well, I'm going to go to college, mom and dad. What are you going to do? Study music? I guess then I'm going to be a band director. That's it. But I never honestly actually really wanted to do that. Never really was interested in the K through 12 thing. I didn't actually want to do that with my life, but seemingly it was the only choice until I just dug into music theory, and then I noticed I had professors who did a bunch of different things with their life musically, like adjunct instructors who perform on the weekends. I'm like, that seems like a cool life. And then it wasn't until I started at a community college. I did a couple years there, and then I transferred to Michigan State, and I finished my school there. And it was at Michigan State where I started getting into the hardcore music ed classes, and I think that's where they try to weed out people that don't actually love that. And it worked for me. I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. And the fear that I had of like diving into a degree that might be worthless, like you hear stories about that, and I'm like, I don't know, but the music theory thing just made so much sense to me. And then there was a an instructor at Michigan State that was female, really great musician, strong, strong musical person, music theory, and I sat down and talked to her. I was like, "Can we meet? Can you answer some questions for me? Like, is this a bad idea? If I change my major to music theory, am I going to regret it?" And the best advice I ever got, which I will repeat to people too, is don't go down a path like that, something as big and expensive as a college degree. Like, you might as well like what you're going to do, even if you don't fully know what you're going to do with it yet. And my parents, fortunately, were supportive. They kind of wondered, they're like, so what do you do with that degree? But the clincher for me was when I found out the pile of classes to get a degree in music education is huge. And I found out that I could get a master's degree in music theory in the time it would have taken me to finish the bachelor's of music ed. I was like, I'm sold. A master's degree I can teach at the college. I can teach college courses, get an assistantship, get some college teaching experience. And I trusted my gut on that decision. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. So I do not regret that at all. I kind of jumped away from the security net and landed, I think, in the best possible place. So trust your gut. But yeah, it was just the music theory, the love for that that really kind of drove a lot of my decisions. And that's how I ended up. I always taught private lessons too, but I guess as far as explaining things, I think I can attribute that to the people I studied with. My degree is actually in music theory pedagogy, so studying how to teach it to people. So I had a couple of solid years of classes and training. Then you just do it. I feel like Zoom during the pandemic allowed me to branch off and kind of share this information with different groups of people than I dealt with in college. So it just worked out. The story writes itself.
I love that. It's really powerful that you had a professor that you felt comfortable enough to kind of ask these big life questions to, because I think so many people can relate to that feeling of not knowing, am I making the right choice? What's going to happen if I do this thing? And it's great that you had someone that you were able to kind of ask that question to and say, what are my other options? Because you're right, to most people, they just think, oh, you either teach music and that's it. And that's all the options you have kind of at the end of the day. And when you were talking about the classes that you took in music theory, and especially during the pandemic, because that's where we first crossed paths and teaching on Zoom, is it different teaching to a group of college students that are all like music based? I'm assuming are all with have music related majors versus maybe a group of people that are tuning into this as like a pursuit outside of their typical 9 to 5 day to day.
Every room of people is different, really, whether it's a college room or a Zoom meeting room or whatever. But I think people's desire to be in the room is the thing that really counts the most. And I've been fortunate to teach in a bunch of different situations, like teaching at Belmont and Lipscomb. It's more traditional universities, but of course, at both places, the commercial music degrees are hugely popular. So actually, the bulk of their students are generally studying something related to like commercial voice or music tech, production, songwriting. Those are the most popular degrees, musical theater as well. So there's a lot of people in my college classes that are similar to the people that I cross paths with like thinking outside the blocks or just other people around town, around Nashville. So I would say teaching at SAE was actually a bit different for me because that job came up at a good time for me. That was when I first started learning Logic. And then they're like, hey, we need somebody to teach music theory. It's basically music theory for producers, and we use Logic. Can you do that? And I'm like, yes, give me a few days. I need, but yeah, it's that's mostly engineers, audio engineers with not necessarily much musical background. But I mean, everybody comes in with the same attitude and mindset of like, I want to dig in and learn more about music. And that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, what tools can we gain, I guess? What can we teach ourselves? What can we learn to carry forward in whatever it is that we want to do with our musical goals?
And you shared that the SAE group is mainly producers. Do you think it's important, or I'd love to hear your thoughts around if someone is like a singer-songwriter, an artist, independent, they're, doing a lot of it themselves. How important is it, do you think, for them to learn some basic DAW or production skills? Like, do you think that's a necessary skill for someone if they're, not yet at a level where they're maybe working with a producer?
That's a great question. I think, gosh, I don't have a concise answer for that. I think it depends on the person and what their goals are mostly, but the short and immediate answer that comes to mind is I think it could never hurt anybody to have the basic skills, even if they just open up GarageBand and figure out how to make some sort of a work tape that sounds a little bit better. But I do also think some people, like myself, I found it very interesting to dig into Logic. I love recording my own ideas, and I feel like that also was a big vessel that opened up for me. I feel like my output has increased, like getting ideas out, and it allows you to, even if your ideas suck, sometimes we all have sucky ideas, but you have to get them out. And I think it's a good tool for that. But again, if it's a tool, it's good. And if it's something that is just going to be a distraction or a hindrance, then maybe it's not for you. Because I think at the end of the day, it's really also easy to fall into the trap of finding a way to avoid writing. So sometimes just a pencil and paper is great too, in a voice memo.
Yeah, whatever's going to allow you to just continue to create new things.
Yeah. But like we said earlier, sometimes maybe that's trying something new. And if you feel stuck, maybe something completely off kilter is exactly what you need to get going again. Who knows?
As someone who grew up, I grew up in school band. We never like formally learned music theory. I feel like you just kind of pick things up along the way when you're just kind of exposed to music in general. But a lot of people tuning into this episode are going to fall into the camp of either being a songwriter, artist, or a music lover in general. And they're just someone interested in kind of the stories and the journeys that people have that are involved in music. And so my question to you is like, do you have any like tips for someone tuning in? Maybe music theory is something that they haven't really dug into before. They haven't really started to learn. Like, are there any foundational things that you think are really important for someone to learn as they begin a journey of learning more about music theory?
Yes.
I
Yes.
know that's a big question.
The vocabulary for harmony and melody is important. I think if you can understand the major scale, I think that gets you really far because so many other things just come from that. You could say that chords are like if you take a melody and you just stack the notes up together, you get chords. And likewise, the other side of the coin is that if you take a chord and you tip it on its side, you get a melody. So, you know, the scale's the foundation for chords, and chords come from the scale. And I think things get a little more complex. You can just keep stacking notes on top of each other. You can do things with form. I think scales, just getting them under your fingers is always going to be a go-to. And to some people, it's not the most exciting thing in the world to practice, but there's so so much opportunity that can come from just understanding of being in a key, you know, even opening up a DAW and building a project and knowing what it means to be in a key and what departs from the key. That's a good foundation, I would say. And it's funny too, the things that we sometimes find. This applies to so many things outside of music, but like, have you ever heard people talk about like you learn a thing and then it's totally okay to change your mind. So maybe you have a stance on something and then you do a total 180, and then in a couple of years you might be completely on the opposite side of what you were on before. And I think sometimes with music, I mean, our tastes change in things. One example of that, of how you might say one thing and then change your mind later from what you used to say, like one of my big foundations of teaching theory for songwriters or for anybody is I kind of would section it off into the three pillars of music. I would call them melody, harmony, and rhythm. Like there's three things to music and that's it. And then I attended a conference this past May, and if you've ever heard of a music theory conference, it doesn't get much nerdier, and I say that with love. It was really fun. I learned so much. I went with a panel of folks from Lipscomb University, and we have some good things going there. So we presented a panel on some of the our teaching approaches in the music theory classroom, and it was really fun. And I learned a lot by being at that conference. And one of the talks that I saw is there's a woman giving a talk on the importance of all the other elements of music that we don't normally remember to include in the classroom when we're teaching. Like we're talking about scales and we're talking about rhythms and we're looking at the music on the page. But how about we talk about how to interpret what's on the page and performances? Like who chooses to give this rubato section? Like how much do they slow it down? How much space do they take? Or do they just rush through it? Is it faster? I mean, interpretation of things, it blew my mind and it made me come home and reevaluate the way I teach everything, which is good. That's a good thing. So, yeah, I think it's good to learn some theory. It's good to have the foundation. It's good to continuously seek information that you're curious about. You never know what you're going to find that might be the next thing that you need to try.
Totally. What you were saying around like sometimes you change your mind. Living here in Nashville, I feel like my first 2 years we were just writing a bunch with like on a guitar. Just someone in the room's playing on a guitar, someone's playing with the keys. And I would say in the last like 3, 4 months, I've started trying to write where maybe there's someone in the room trying to build a track. So now that changes your whole approach when you go to writing because now you're like, I mean, I'm still writing lyrics and I'm still writing melodies, but now there might be more of a bass or you use the term rhythm. Like there might be rhythms naturally in a track that now that changes how you write on top of it. So I think it's fun to experiment too.
Agreed. Even things like timbre, like somebody pulls up a great synth bass that you just don't get when you strum on a guitar. You know, not that you need that great synth bass to write a great song, but sometimes certain sounds or certain textures or tempos will inspire something. So you never know. You just never know.
And I love what you said around, sometimes someone can try and learn something new as a distraction from writing. But one thing I've always heard TOTB say and amazing musicians like yourself say, like, you just got to keep writing. Like, you just got to keep making new stuff because if you ever feel stuck or if you ever feel like, oh, I don't know how to move beyond this, it's like you just got to continue to work on it to get something out. And sometimes that means bringing in new colors, but it's really what you're able to continue to create that I feel like helps you move forward.
Yeah, totally. You learn by doing. I had a great professor that said that, and it's such a simple saying, but yet it's so powerful. You learn by doing. So you just have to make sure you're doing the right kinds of things, I guess. But
Yeah. And I can relate to like the practicing scales. It was something I was like really good at early on. And I would say good at, that's probably very generous. That was something I kept in mind early on that I've kind of fallen off, but it's a great reminder to kind of pick back that because especially if you're someone like me who struggles sometimes to find a key or like knowing what the key is, play the notes so that way you can hear it. And then you're like, all right, keep within these boundaries unless you want to step outside. But yeah, great reminder.
yeah, and you know, I think knowing where the boundaries are so that if you do want to step outside of them, like, you know, if you're playing in D minor, but you just end up throwing in I don't know, you throw in maybe you know that there's a B flat in D minor, but you play a B natural instead and it just it's what you want, and you deliberately know, like, nah, I'm going to play it this way, and there's an intention there. I don't know. You know the scale, and then you can venture outside of the scale if you want to.
Yeah, I love that. Question, because you've studied music theory, you teach music theory, do you ever find like yourself, if you're listening to music casually or just commercially, that you'll start thinking critically and like, oh, why did they do this or why did they do that? Or do you feel like you can step back and just appreciate music for what it is?
I, I really don't criticize a whole lot when I'm listening to music. I try to just sit there and notice things. People make creative decisions based on what they're thinking or feeling at that time, and that's where it took them. And I try to appreciate that because I know when it comes time to share my own stuff, I mean, people are going to listen critically, maybe if they want, and that's cool. But I know where I'm coming from with it, so I just try to listen with open ears. But even not so much being a judge about music, I can't turn off the analytical ears as far as like what's going on with the chord progressions and the melodies and like, ooh, that rhythm. Sit down and imitate it or something and be like, oh my gosh, that's the Phrygian mode. That's so cool. I love that they use that scale there. I I'll notice stuff and I usually it's in a good way. I'll hear something and catch it and notice how somebody deliberately did what they did. But yeah, usually it's just trying to appreciate somebody's art. I think that's been one of the most enjoyable things. I feel like you could develop critical ears, and that's for the better. We have to learn some amount of discipline. People have said that music majors and medical majors are some of the hardest working people in college. Supposedly, there's been studies done, but I don't have any data to back that up. But musicians are in the practice rooms constantly, and then, of course, doing homework and participating in ensembles and things. And there's so much learning to be done and so much exposure to different things. And in my opinion, the most well-rounded musician has, exposed themselves to multiple things. And I guess listening with open ears is more enjoyable than having the critical ears constantly be the ones that are listening.
I heard someone say this once. The difference between listening to something and not liking it sometimes is it's just outside the scope of what you've heard before. So it's like you might not like it just because you haven't been exposed to that particular sound or that particular genre yet. And it's like, okay, but if you expose yourself more, it's possible you might develop a liking for it or at least an interest.
That's a good way to put it. I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin, the producer. Have you read his book?
The creative act.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, great book.
Yeah. I think anytime I'm asked for advice, all I really want to do is just hand that book over to people. Any advice I give is quotes I picked up from producers like him. But he says something somewhere that a song that's really going to make an impact or like a great song is one that you might listen to a song and your first listen to it, you might be like, "Huh, I don't know about that." Like your initial reaction is maybe not you love it, but you listen to it a couple more times, and sometimes those are the songs that you really fall in love with, or the ones that really stick to you in some meaningful way. What you said reminded me of that.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good book. And for anyone who hasn't listened or read it before, what I love about it is it's broken into these really small, digestible chunks. So if you're someone that maybe doesn't enjoy sitting down and reading 20 to 30 page chapters, some of those chapters can be as short as a paragraph or a page or two. So it's like really easy to pick up and put down as you need. So such a good book, such a great recommendation. Are there any other books or resources that you have really enjoyed reading about either creativity or art that you think someone who's looking for a tool or a resource might enjoy as well?
Yeah, oh gosh, I've got a rack full of books. The War of Art is always inspiring. Currently, I'm reading Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattison. Anything that he has put out, I think, is very helpful. I've really enjoyed Pat Pattison. He has a free course as well, maybe more than one, but I found his course helpful. Seth Godin, of all people, he's more into like the more marketing. But as far as, creative, if you're thinking about making music and releasing it and who to show your music to and how to build fans if anybody's on that side of things. Seth Godin's books, speaking of being concise, easy to digest chunks, they're very short books. I've got a few of them, and they're written in a voice that's very it's easy to read, easy to understand, but it's also interesting, I guess. He's good at writing. So that's Seth Godin. There's a bunch. I'll remember him later.
I love it. And especially for someone who's just interested in building their own little library of resources and tools. I've heard of a few that you mentioned, but Seth Godin I have not heard of. So I'm excited to dig into some of his stuff.
Purple Cow, I think. That was one of the ones that's pretty short. The Dip, there's inspiring books.
Amazing. And I'll make sure to link all of those in the description for anyone who's interested in checking some of them out. I'll make sure I add links so people can find those titles. And so, speaking of creativity, especially someone that wants to release music, you're sitting for anyone who's listening to this audibly, you are sitting in front of this beautiful drum set. And I know early on you talked about learning trumpet first, but then developing a love for the drums. When you find yourself, oh, there's the trumpet. Perfect. I'm telling you, Lisa can play like every instrument under the sun. I swear.
Not guitar. I mean, I can
No,
play a few chords. I don't even try. My husband's a guitarist though, so I know a guy.
you can always pull it in if you need.
I mean, it's Nashville. I just open my front door and yell for a guitarist, and 100 of them come running. At least.
That's so true. But especially learning drums, one of the coolest classes I took with TOTB that you were leading was talking about rhythm for songwriters and how you can use rhythm to create like a vibe or, to add, complement things that you've already written. And I'd love to just learn more from you. Like you mentioned, I think college was when you started learning drums. What was it like learning drums and do you still find yourself gravitating towards it now?
In college, when I started getting into it, it was like basically every chance I could sit down at a kit, I would. And I must have been so annoying just being that person making a racket. But there were a few like percussion majors at the school. A couple of them like sat down, gave me a lesson, just showed me a few things for free, just for fun. Like we're in the hallway in the practice rooms. Learned a couple beats, and then I'd play in a community band once a week just for some extra practice. And at the end of practice, I'd sit down at the kit and play a little bit. And then I joined a band, and when there wasn't band practice, I'd go play on the kit. And then years have gone by, and I always had access to one, so I would practice just on my own for fun. And I started getting serious about drums. Let's see. I started getting serious about drums probably in 2018, 2017. I think I actually bought my first kit of my very own in 2020. There was a good deal online and stuff was cheap. I don't know. So
Right.
and I was hanging out at home, so I bought a kit. But I've taken several lessons. There's many great players here in town, so I feel like I have so much catching up to do still. I mean, I feel that way probably about everything I play, but it's fun. I feel like my limitations are I'm trying to take the lessons and build the fundamental stuff still. So learning the drums, it's been a journey, but I just like to play, really. So I'm not really looking to be a rock star on drums. Like everybody in this town can play circles around me, but I just love it. It's therapeutic. It actually is, and there's something satisfying about it, like the music theory, how there's an itch that it scratches. Same thing with drums. So I don't know. I do it because I like it, and then I can. I've been singing and drumming, so that's. I guess I like to make things hard for myself, because that's two separate things that I feel like I'm not great at either of them, but it's just really fun to do. So that's what I do.
Oh my God, I love that. Also, is that not extremely difficult? Because I feel like drums are, you're keeping a very consistent, rhythm, very consistent pace, but the melodies when you're singing can just like float on. I feel like that would be so hard to do those things together.
I guess it's like I mean, you sing and play piano, and you sing and play guitar. I guess it's you just kind of figure it out. You get used to it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I love what you said around. you took some lessons because it was something that you were interested in. And, even as we were talking about your background before, like growing up playing instruments, going to college, learning in a professional sense, and then educating other people, it's like, I just find it so inspiring that you still continue to take a lesson or pursue things if you feel like I want to learn more. I love that that's something that you're still open to.
Yeah, I think, I'll tell my students in the universities, I'll remind them there's no shame in asking for help. Like in a music theory class, like I can help you, especially in music theory, you have to usually take several semesters of it. So I'm like, if you get behind now, it's just going to be harder later. So I'm always encouraging people like come to me for help. Let me help it be easier for you. and and I saw one of them had copied that down on her homework once she turned it in. It said there is no shame in asking for help. Like, and I feel like I have to take my own advice because there are times where I'm like, I don't know. I go through spells. It's hard. I like playing a lot of instruments. I feel like I'm moderately okay at all of them. For a while I was probably best at trumpet because I've logged the most hours, but I think drums are starting to maybe take that over because I spend more time practicing them because I'm trying to catch up. But I still try to play trumpet most days. Just I like it and I don't want to throw it away. So juggling all the practicing is hard, but I think I it's kind of being able to accept where I'm at. Acceptance is huge. And being like, this is where I'm at today. Where do I see myself like in the next 6 months to a year? What do I need to be doing? What do I need to be more comfortable with? Like currently, kind of getting ready to write a bunch more songs. I think about playing. I have an album that's gradually going to be released as singles, and then eventually there will be an album. The goal would be to I'm not going to look to build an audience by touring, but to play shows would be cool. Haven't really played my own shows in a while, so in this new format, drumming and singing, and it's a two-piece band. We're gonna have other people on stage probably at some point, but like at some point I'm gonna have to switch gears into figuring out the live stuff, and that's a different thing than trying to get my voice into shape to be really comfortable with myself for tracking vocals. So it's always shifting, and I'll feel like I'll focus on something for a while, and then another skill will get a little dusty. I'll be like, no, 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 wait, come back, and then I have to go. It's like putting out fires. But
Yeah,
it's
my parents call it whack-a-mole. It's like as soon as you get one thing down, it's like, all right, something else pop back up. Okay, now I got to focus on that for a minute.
yep. And I think practicing I really like some of the stuff that TOTB does as far as goal setting and just the general inspirational reminders of this supportive community, even the reminders of like be kind to yourself. There are other people leading the group that are always saying that for themselves, and it's nice to see how these people that I really respect talk to themselves, and they have hard times too sometimes. We all do. The importance of just being able to say, okay, here's where I'm at today, and maybe I'm not happy with everything that I'm doing today, but I've really come a long way since yesterday, since last week, and what can I do? All I can do is just get up and keep going tomorrow, and what can I work on tomorrow? How about this weekend? What about 6 months? Where am I headed? And I just kind of try to constantly be shifting things. And again, I it's a crazy life, but I like it. I think I'd get bored just trying to do one thing really well. I'm okay with not doing a great job at everything. I mean, it's good enough for myself at least. So it's a good life.
Yeah. And that's so powerful, like the mindset piece. And I'm also a big fan of TOTB and the community that they've built. And like I was so lucky to have met you through TOTB, and Allie and Bess who run TOTB are phenomenal musicians, creatives, all of the above. I'll also have TOTB's information linked below if anyone's interested in checking that out. Strongly recommend. And Lisa, you kind of hinted at this upcoming album project. I would love to dig into your new band project, ADDOCD. I would love. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's an alt rock band. It's my husband and I, and it kind of got rolling just the two of us at home 2020, 2021, 2022. We have always played in bands together. we had a project for a long time with a bunch of people. Really fun. Did the indie band thing, made a lot of records, did a lot of touring, and then 2020, it went on ice, which it was hard at first, and we kind of sort of kept it going for a while, but the break seemed to really be sort of a breath of fresh air at the time, and it was a good opportunity for me to just allow myself to be myself as a musician. I've been a side gal in a lot of other bands, and it's really fun. I've played with a few Nashville bands. I love being a part of a band. It's fun letting somebody else be in charge, and I can show up and, play a chart or whatever, play a show. And it's a great time, and I love doing that. But like being able to make my own creative decisions was a much needed thing, and I didn't really realize that it had been a while since I just made music for fun the way I wanted it to be. And I guess the 2020 time period was some sort of silver lining. I just started writing like crazy. And my husband and I like a lot of the same music, and we like to write in the same style, and we just decided to finish some songs, and we're both into audio, songwriting, production. So we just decided to make a new project, and we like, well, what's the result of the two of us working together? And that's why we call ourselves ADD OCD. For anybody that cares, he's ADD and I'm OCD. Legitimate diagnosis at various stages of life, for sure, not just using the terms lightly. um, but it's true. I think that's kind of what the music sounds like. So it's fun. It's kind of like yeah, alternative rock, female vocals, but it's he sings too, we sing together, and we recorded 13 songs, and I think we'll probably have at least 10 or 11 of them on the album, and I think a couple of them seem like outliers, so they'll be released at some point. But we've released one single so far called Losers Club that came out a few weeks ago, and that was a TOTB song that came out of one of their prompts. It was a prompt to write a list song, so we kind of wrote a song around a list of reasons why we might feel like a loser sometimes, and it was fun. Really liked the song, so there's maybe about half of the songs in the collection came out of prompts that TOTB offered. So I love that group. It really came along at the right time for me too, as far as being online a lot, being stuck at home. Like, well, I know some people were very negatively impacted by the pandemic, and I'm like, I guess I'll just sit in this room with instruments and keep myself busy. So I tried to make the most of it. The second single's coming out next week, and we'll be doing that kind of throughout the spring and summer, is releasing singles. We want to start writing some more, but yeah, it's a fun project. It's kind of new for me. It was a little bit scary to jump into being the voice out front as opposed to the person on stage left playing supporting roles. So I can't think about it too much or I start to get freaked out. I just have to do.
So many gems in there. I can't wait to explore. Specifically, starting with Losers Club, the first track that's released. I've been listening to it. It's so fun, and I can really relate. To me as a listener, it felt like this emotional connection of either getting left behind or not feeling like you connect with other people. Like I 100% relate to that, and I really love how it never comes off as like a woe is me. It just kind of comes off as this like acceptance of who I am kind of message. I'm not sure if that's like what you were aiming for, if you would 100% agree, but that's what I took away from listening to it.
I love that. I mean, I think the listener, it is whatever the listener takes it as. So yeah, but
That-
yes, that's pretty much what we were going for too.
And even the design of the cover art with it having kind of the clipped images together, kind of like one of those like ransom notes or something you would see. I love that.
Yeah, we were kind of going for the vibe of a punk zine, kind of like a little bit indie, a little bit punk, kind of like I guess the alternative rock. A lot of our influence comes from. I mean, we grew up in the '90s. We were born in the '80s, so we're '90s kids, early aughts music. So a lot of the bands we listen to, there's a small amount of self-deprecating humor in a lot of the like punk bands. Like I wouldn't call myself a punk band, but I think there's a lot of influence, like the energy and just the overall outlook and attitude of like, well, here's what it is, so I guess this is how it's going to be. Some amount of acceptance in that that's kind of nice, but so yeah, the punk zine vibe seemed kind of fitting for Losers Club.
You mentioned like influences that you and your husband have similar, you have similar tastes in that. Who are some of your influences either growing up or especially now as you were creating this project?
I would say for this project, some big influences have been like more recent influences have been like Metric, Phantogram, other two-piece bands, 21 Pilots, a lot of their lyrics and message and overall everything they're doing. Also the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the Strokes, the bands of kind of the early aughts rock revival. Listened to a lot of that music actually in college, so it's ingrained in me. Some albums I've just listened to over and over again, you know. So stuff by the
Yeah.
Strokes. And then I think growing up, the stuff I listened to, that's an interesting question. Because I would say mostly just listen to what was on the radio growing up. So just mainstream pop, really, which I like. So like when I was in, I remember coming home and watching MTV after school, and it was like Total Request Live, and it's songs by NSYNC and Britney Spears. It's really all like Max Martin productions. I'm a fan. I like pop. I like a lot of the simplicity of those arrangements, but there's some genius woven into there for sure, and some great performances by those artists. So there's a pop element that comes in. My dad always liked the Beatles, so the Beatles records are something that's very familiar to me. And there's this great tie-in between nerdy music theory stuff and the Beatles.
Oh,
there's
really?
there's a professor at University of Michigan, or at least he was when I was in college, who has done a lot of research on the Beatles and studying their music from kind of a scholarly standpoint, and obviously accepting the fact that it's pop music, but the way he observed the way they were making music and how it just happened, and then like looking at it through a music theory lens at what they did largely they were creating just from their own influences and what they listened to. But I mean, a lot of what they did was very deliberate, and I just love that he analyzed their music in a theoretic sense. So I really dug into the Beatles pretty deep in college. I wrote some papers on them. I think another big influence, I guess I like British artists. Muse is a favorite band of mine. And Nick, my husband, he's a guitarist primarily, guitarist and producer, and he loves all the, you know, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page guitar players. But he's always listening to everything. He's studied classical guitar in college, so there's this interesting tie between classical music and also heavy metal. um,
Really?
a lot of people might not really think about that, but there's a lot of similarities there if you ever think about it, or like look at the evolution of metal and like the virtuosity showcased in metal music. But anyways, he's not really a metal musician, but he is a classical musician, so therefore he's pretty good at shredding. But we're more into you know, not shredding in our music. It's more we kind of like focusing our music around the songs,
Hmm.
and also I'm kind of a fan of less is more arrangements, but you might not know that by listening to some of the songs we made, because by the time you get done adding like everything that you hear in your head, eh,
It's like 50 lines long or something.
some of them, but not all of them.
And you shared that you guys are a duo. That's so interesting that like a two-piece band. I noticed on production it said like the two of you, did you guys produce this whole thing yourselves? Like play all the instruments, put it all together?
We did, yeah, we wrote all the songs, yeah, did the production, did the arrangements, played everything. It was all just the two of us in our house by ourselves in the basement with very little input from anybody. We kind of deliberately didn't really talk about it. Partially that's because people say you shouldn't talk about something that you're going to do. You should just do the thing and then tell people about it. That's pretty good advice, I guess. But We just kind of wanted to not get sidetracked. We wanted to just make the music and get it to where we were happy with it. Seems like some very simple advice. That was something we heard from a producer we worked with a few years ago with another project, but get it to where you're happy with it. It seems so easy, but it's not always that easy.
Especially with the two of you having such a wide musical landscape of experience to fall back on. It's like here, if you can hear arrangements in your head, I feel like then I imagine there's that challenge, that hurdle of being like, okay, how do I take what I'm hearing in my head and actually make it coming from the speakers of what I'm listening to? Like that to me seems very daunting.
Yeah, and then what are they the saying of like throw a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks? Like you can try all your ideas. You might not want all of your ideas to stay, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it took us a couple years to I guess that was the recording process, the actually like recording and producing the record. We were writing before that, so it seemed like it took forever, but we were just going slow,
Mhm.
trying to be methodical and do it right, trying to not take shortcuts, trying to not be messy.
And so Losers Club is the first song that came out. It looks like Game Day is going to be the next release coming out on the 28th of February, which is super soon, which is so exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about that track? Any kind of like little sneak peek behind what's coming?
Sure, Game Day, that song started with lyrics, and this was a few years back. That's an older set of lyrics. Its first iteration Nick had written. He participated in some. He like downloaded a class. I mean, we're always trying online classes and stuff, right? So he took some class. It was a speed songwriting thing, and he, as a result of that, I think just one day sat down and wrote out start to finish a page of lyrics without even really thinking about it. They just came out. And it's like, oh, cool. Like there's nothing even crossed out. It just one of those instances where it just falls out. And I think that version of the song that was several years ago, and then we kind of ran that idea by it's existed in a couple of arrangements, I guess. But then I always really liked that song, and then it never really got finished. There's versions that were like work tapes that were made, demos that were made, but it was never anything that was completed and had the care and love put into it to get it finished. And we decided to include it in this collection because I think he was sick of listening to me talk about it. I was like, let's do game day, let's do game day. I was like, fine, we'll do game day. And we rewrote all the melodies, rewrote the music, kind of kept the tempo about the same, rewrote the phrasing, rewrote, yeah, probably about like 90% of the lyrics. And I really like how it turned out. It's interesting. It's kind of I would say it's an interesting hybrid between blues-based rock and hip hop. It's got some influences of both, and I guess it's like both of us vocals, both of us singing together, kind of some trading back and forth in the verses, kind of like old school hip hop a little bit, but not at all like that because it's us, I guess. But we both really like a lot of like 80s and 90s hip hop, so much appreciation for that music. I think it just kind of took on some of the attitude of that coming out in our own way. And then I like it because the title Game Day might make you think of one thing, but it's really not written about wings and television and sports. So yeah, it's more about the things that go on inside your head. I think like the way you talk to yourself, like not letting yourself get beat up by potentially yourself or others. But so yeah, I really like how the song turned out. It's really fun, and we made a video for it just in his studio. We used a 360 camera to make the video. It's kind of hard to explain, but I guess you'll probably know it when you see it.
And even your Instagram and the music video, the lyric video that you had come out for Losers Club, it seems like you guys like to dabble in like video recording, production around like the images as well. Do you find that part of it fun or do you find that part draining?
Mostly fun. It's a lot of work, but we do really enjoy visuals. Both of us had like a camcorder in high school. You know, me and my friends would go skating and bring the camera, just make stupid videos of like chasing each other around on rollerblades. And Nick was in the AV club in high school or took the class, just we always enjoyed both of us. That was before we met. And then being in a band, it's all about the music, but it's also how you show it to people. And I think we both really like telling stories both through the songs and through the videos as well. So it is a lot of work, but I think we both enjoy having that be part of the process as well.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful what you were saying around like it's the storytelling. Like yes, you're telling a story through the song, but like it's also the way you package it for someone else to understand what you're the impression you want them to walk away from. And especially in today's landscape where so many people are independent and trying to find ways to share their stuff online, it's like you have this whole route of creativity around the video and the visual and the lyric videos that you get to be creative around too.
Yeah, it's fun. And I think also like the more obvious you can be with what your music is and even what it looks like, I think then you want to reach the people that are really going to love the music. And so we're not looking to reach the masses. We're looking to reach the people that see those cut out ransom letters and somehow understand what the vibe is and where it comes from. So yeah, I think they see it and they hear it and I think it's all a part of trying to let people be a part of something.
Totally. You said early on that it's kind of exciting, also a little nerve-wracking around like, being a drummer and singing at the same time. Do you have any shows coming up that you're really excited about or any planned live performances that you'll be sharing some of this music out?
Not yet. I would love to play shows. I think all in time. I think we're gonna put some music out, and fortunately, with other projects that we've had in the past, we got to do the indie tours. We got to like go on the road and book shows and sleep on couches and eat carrots in the van and Subway. I don't know. We got to do all that, and personally I enjoy working from home. I have a cat here next to me. I like my life at home. I like my jobs at the school. I would love to tour, but I'm not looking to be in a hurry to like try to grow a fan base from touring. That's really expensive and time consuming, and we did that. Glad we did. And now I think we're going to see how far we can get by just reaching people with the music online and YouTube videos and social media, and it can be done. It's a very saturated world. There's a lot of news flying around, but I think there's still at the end of the day people that will connect to the music. So I think if we can start to get a thing going, we should also book some shows just to like do it again. That'd be a good idea. But yes, nothing on the books now, but we would love to get to that point. And I don't know what that's going to look like yet. We did do a performance. We played Losers Club at Lipscomb University
Oh,
2 years
cool.
ago. We actually went there and did a little presentation for the music majors, like a production breakdown and a playthrough of the song, and it was fun. We played to a track. He played guitar, I played drums, and we sang and put the synths and some other stuff on a track, and it worked fine. I always kind of say it'd be good to be able to play through our music as a two-piece. Although I know both of us in our heads, we would like a live show to have a lot of energy and a lot of different stuff going on. I want to be able to bring my trumpet and play it maybe just for a song, but I also don't want to like have the songs be lacking. So we'll probably at some point bring another person or two onto the stage with us, but we're kind of going to figure that out as we go.
I love that. I can just picture you behind the drum set and then you have your trumpet right next to you and then you just like break it out for like a trumpet solo or if you're lucky enough to have like a trombone and maybe a couple brasses. I love brass instruments, especially when they all play together. They get the most gorgeous chordal tones that I wish I learned to play a brass instrument. Just I love them so much.
It's not too late, Paige.
I know. Okay, I do want to learn how to play the saxophone because I feel like it's the closest transition instrument because like clarinet and sax are similar, but sax luckily has more of that warmer sound that can they'll let sax and jazz band, but not clarinet. But anyways, now I'm off on a tangent. But you're right, it's never too late. And I'm also just curious because so I'm a songwriter. I'm not releasing stuff as an artist. I'm always fascinated. How do you pick the order of the songs that you're going to release? Like, did you always know Losers Club was going to be the first track out? Did you always know Game Day was going to be the second track out?
That's a good question. I think this first record, gosh, it's also easy to fall into the trap of being like, well, the next album is going to be even more clear. So, it's staying in the present. Let's see here. This album, we Losers Club is fairly close to the center of what we feel like our sound is. Game Day's not far off. I think out of what I say, 13 songs, I think there's maybe like at least half of them sit really nicely together as a collection. There's a couple of outliers. There's one that's like a bit heavier, a bit faster, a bit more intense. There's one that's maybe our least favorite as far as the songwriting goes, or maybe the how the drums on the track ended up sounding or something. I don't know. We've got our favorites and our least favorites, but I think we picked the track order of the album, and then we were kind of thinking about, well, what do we release first? And we kind of thought also starting from nothing, fresh Instagram page, fresh TikTok page, a website, and like nobody knows any of it's there. So you're going to release a song, and then you have to like start telling, you have to get your first follower at some point. And it was a very interesting thing it's been a long time since I've started an account and just literally starting from zero. So we were like, whatever's first is potentially going to be like a sacrificial song. Like it might just be a total flop, and we have to accept that and know that it's okay. And people can always go back later and hear your music. It's not like it has one chance. But it seemed like Losers Club seemed like a pretty fitting message, I guess, for like a brand new band just coming out of the gate. Like, well, here we are. We're a couple of dorks. Here's a song. Maybe you'll like it. And if you do, maybe you'll like our other stuff too. So Game Day just happened to be the next song that we had a video for. We've got like a list of things we want to do. We actually just shot a third video. It's currently being edited, so that song will probably be next just because we had ideas for a video. So we just kind of the rest of the order just kind of has rolled out at the convenience of like do we have everything we need to shoot this video? So and most of them we're just doing at home. Game Day we ended up doing next because I really had this idea in my head with the 360 camera. I wanted to mount it on my motorcycle. Something about the motorcycle seemed fitting to me for this song. I don't know why. Maybe it's not, but in my head it was. So we slowed down the song and we made a version of it that was double speed, and we put in Bluetooth earbuds, and I wore one and Nick wore the other, and he was playing the song at double time on his phone. So we were singing along to the song while we were riding up and down Franklin Pike in Nashville. I wanted to do that, so it was fall. It was before the weather got too cold to ride. I was like, let's just, if we shoot this video, then I can edit it even if it starts to get chilly. But I'm a sissy and I don't like riding my motorcycle if it's colder than like 70 degrees. Uh,
I don't blame you.
so it's really funny. It looks like when you see it, actually the clip we put up today, it looks like we're going kind of fast on the video, but we were actually going pretty slow. We were probably going like 35, and we were going slow enough that people were flying past us in the other lane. Like these motorcyclists, like motorcycles are supposed to be like edgy and
Speed
rebellious.
demons. Yeah.
People are like really slow and dumb. So we were just irritating people. We were getting honked at, singing the song very slowly and riding very slowly. And then we sped it up later so you can see the stuff going by faster. So that was interesting. But I wanted to get the bike shots before it got chilly. So we hurried up and shot that one day. And then the rest of it we shot in Nick's studio.
I love that. Next time I drive past someone who's on a motorcycle, I'm gonna look really close and be like, are they recording a music video right now? Because that's hilarious.
The best part was, yeah, we'd like go back and forth up and down the same stretch of road because we found a stretch that wasn't too busy and there weren't too many stoplights. And it was like just far enough out of town that we could go slow and not irritate too many people. But At one point, we were trying a few different variations of where the camera was mounted, and he, Nick mounted it on the back of my bike, and it was way up, like over my head on this pole. And then we're like going past the freeway overpass, and it like just kind of slowly went clunk, and it was laying across like my helmet, and I was holding it up, and I'm just like sitting there like, okay, don't panic. There's nothing I can do right now. We had gotten the shots we needed, so I wasn't nervous about the video being ruined, but I'm like, I'm sitting here at a stoplight, and there's a pole laying across my head, and there's a camera like dangling in front of me, and let's see if I can just like make it home. I've got like a mile and a half to go. Let's just not have this camera fall off onto the road. It didn't. We made it, but
That is so funny. How long have you been riding a motorcycle?
I learned in probably 2010, 2011. The band we had, we all learned to ride together one summer. Kind of really got into it as a group, and then few years we did some vacationing, like motorcycle rides mixed with tours, and rode around and played some shows.
That's so cool. Talking about launching this new band and kind of getting the image across. Who knows? You might like really start to cultivate a motorcycle club-esque group with you along this journey.
You never know.
You never know. I love that. And it's been so fun getting to talk to you from the Artist Project, even just like for people that are listening, your face has lit up with so much joy. Like I can tell how excited you are about all of these songs. So all of that information will be shared in the notes so that people can go and check out these really exciting new songs from ADD OCD. And I love how we now have a sneak peek of who is which in this group. So much of what you've shared today has been so helpful, and like I truly appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk with us today, Lisa. I know you shared that you had gotten one piece of advice that you felt like was the best piece of advice that you've received, but I'm curious, what advice would you have to share with other either emerging artists or writers, or even people who, even like potential students who just want to learn more about music, songwriting, etc. Like any kind of words of wisdom or advice you'd be able to share with someone like that.
Oh, sure. Let's see here. Like I said earlier, I could just rattle off all the stuff I've read in these books that I love. I mean, I'll share what has resonated the most with me because I can speak from an honest opinion on that, I guess, from the things that have really helped me. And I guess that would be for me, I've always needed reminders to be myself. For me, music is something that feels good. Like I do it because I enjoy it. And not everybody, I guess, makes music for the same reasons. So, there's so many different types of music out there, and people are all coming from different places, writing for different reasons. Sometimes it's therapeutic, sometimes it's some sort of a release, or sometimes it's making a statement of, I mean, there could be so many reasons for writing a song. So for me, it's been important to say what I want to say, make the music the way I want to make it, and not let other people make me feel like anything is flawed for any reason, that's my decision if I allow people to bring me down, I guess. But like, not everybody is going to get what you do. I think there's something for everybody out there, and I think some good advice, I guess, coming from some of these books is that aiming for the center, like trying to reach as many people as possible, is sort of like old news. I'm kind of a firm believer in the idea that you're best off to go find a niche that's really yours, like a really special group of people that get you. I think trying to connect with people like that is better than trying to reach a million people and hope that maybe they'll hear it and something will stick. So some amount of authenticity, I think whatever it is, like knowing who you are and not being ashamed of that. I think that's been helpful for me. Also helpful to allow myself to just make stuff even if I think, people might hate it, but I don't care. It's fun. That's been big for me. I think also the whole get it to where you're happy with it thing, it kind of lives in that same world a little bit.
Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I'm so grateful that you were that you were willing to take some time and share your experience with us and all of your knowledge. And I'm so grateful to have you here.
Well, thank you for asking me to join you. It's great to catch up. Great to see you again.
Thank you so much. You as well. And every time I have a guest on the show, I always close with the same final question, which is, what is one thing you would tell your younger self?
Probably roll with the weird. It's okay to be weird. You don't have to try and be like everybody else.
I love it. Roll with the weird. Own it. Be yourself. Yeah, Losers Club. That's our national anthem right here. So, where can people find you if they are interested in following along with your journey?
I am on social media, usually as Professor K, but if you search for my name, Lisa Kacos, it probably comes up as well. Instagram and TikTok. I'm on Facebook. I guess I have a Facebook. I don't get on there a whole lot. And that's where you can find me. And and then addocd.com is the band.
Perfect. All of those things are going to be linked down below. So make sure to follow along, especially if you are a fan of that alt music and you're interested in supporting everything ADD OCD is going to be releasing soon. Also, if you just want to see really cool drum videos, Lisa likes to post those sometimes, which is really cool. And if you're not already, make sure to follow along with the So Rude podcast at sorude.podcast on Instagram and TikTok. You can also find us on YouTube, where the full episode with video is going to be shared, but you'll get to see our guests that we were so lucky to have on the show. And as always, if you're not already subscribed on whatever platform you like to listen to the show on, whether that's Apple Podcast or Spotify, please make sure to subscribe. It allows me to show growth and that people are interested in the topics that we're talking about, which allows me to continue to bring on these phenomenal guests who are willing to share so much about themselves and their experience with us to learn from. As always, have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll chat again soon. Bye.